What's up? And today we're going to do a video on something that is quite frequently asked about but seldomly actually covered as far as videos are concerned. Yes, there are a couple videos out there on it, and yes, there are tons of write-ups about it, but if you are one of those kinds of people that needs to see actual hands-on components and how everything goes together, this video is for you. Because sometimes just reading it doesn't really help when you don't know what the internals of a fork looks like. So today, I am going to show you how to internally lower CRF150R, CR85, and CR80 upside down open cartridge forks. Now it's important that before we really jump into doing it, you see what all the components of a fork are. So, for starters, this is the fork body, the fork tube, the stanchion, and the foot. This, of course, is the spring, and this is the compression valve stack. This is the sub-dampening assembly with the top cap with rebound rod. This is the sub-dampener assembly with the spring guide. So, to remove the spring guide, you just screw off this nut and pull the spring guide off. There's really nothing fancy or special about this thing. It's just a black piece of plastic that allows the spring to not wobble around and stays in place inside of the fork body. So, how are we going to actually lower this? Well, what we're actually doing is we're limiting the travel of the sub-damper assembly. And the way that we accomplish this is by putting a spacer inside the body. So, for my purposes, I'm going to internally lower these forks 1.5 inches, so it'll actually only extend this much as opposed to this much. So let's get this dampener rod out of the sub-damper assembly, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So here it is. Here's the dampener rod by itself. So the actual spacer we're gonna make is gonna sit right here. And whenever we put it back into the sub-dampener assembly, it's only going to allow it to travel up so far. So effectively, it's limiting the amount that the forks decompress while not under load. So they're always basically going to be a little bit shorter whenever you sit on the bike. So this is going to be the spacer. I actually lucked out because I had something perfect in my, spare parts box with all my hardware and stuff. So this just slides on the dampening rod and fits over the end, and then we put it in the sub-damper assembly. And voila, 1.5 inches lowered. But there is one thing that I've got to do to this first, and I've got to drill, and probably something that you guys should make sure you look out for. I've got to drill holes so that I do not block the fluid passage in this dampening rod, because we definitely want fork oil to go into this hole so that we do have some dampening aspects of this fork, or else it's just going to be all spring. Alright, so my spacer is done. I actually decided to drill 4 holes at 90 degrees to each other, 2 small ones and 2 bigger ones, to make sure that I got enough oil flow into this dampener rod, because I do not want to mess with the dampening aspects of this fork at all. So let's go ahead and get this thing assembled. So, sub-dampener tube goes into fork body. Make sure it comes all the way down, and then you're going to put your valving back in the bottom. And at this point, you use your special tool. You can actually get this thing threaded in pretty easily without having to use a special tool. Then you're going to want to put your spring guide back on the dampener rod and secure it in place with the nut, and then we will be bleeding these forks. Real quick, before we bleed the forks, we do need to go ahead and take care of the spring. So I'm gonna cut my spring 1 inch real quick. And something else I should mention really quick, anytime you do any kind of cutting, first of all, wear safety glasses. Second of all, before you put it back in your forks, make sure you deburr it, clean it off, because you do not want all of those metal shards floating around in your fork oil, destroying the internals of your forks. All right, now comes everybody's favorite part, bleeding the forks, putting the fluid in, and getting done with this project. So just in case you were wondering, this is what a properly bled fork looks like. You pull it up, it's smooth, you let it go, and it's smooth. It just goes down all by itself, without any help, without any air coming out from the hole, and it's just perfect. So, that was easy, we're done. Bleeding forks really isn't that hard. So now we're gonna set our oil height, our air gap. And this is really important because we have reduced the capacity of the forks. We're going to want to take probably about 10 to 15% of oil back out. So if you have a 100 millimeter specified air gap, we're going to go to 110 millimeters. And it's really easy to do. You just get a syringe, a piece of tubing, and you can measure it out. So I've got this zip tie so that the tubing stays straight. And this is what I measured. So this is set at 110 millimeters. I'm gonna stick this down into the fork, place the zip tie on the edge, and use the syringe to suck out excess oil. Now, this is gonna be the one. You're gonna hear some gurgling noises, and that means that the air gap is set. So here we go. I'm betting this is it. Yep, that was it. So, this was the last amount of oil I sucked out. It's probably about 2 cc's. Put it in my funnel, and we're ready to put the spring back in. So here we go. Spring. Dampening rod. We're gonna pull it up. You don't need a special tool to do this. Anybody that says you do is ridiculous. Put your vice grips in there lightly on the spring guide and spin the spring so that the top cap is just spun straight to it. It's gonna be beautiful. Look at this. Look at this. It's just coming right to us. You don't have to do any kind of fancy tricks, fancy holding. Don't go crazy on the tightness. Just really just grip it. Grip it and rip it. Look, came right to us. So now, pull that in place. Get a couple threads going on the top cap. Get your 2 wrenches, one to hold the top cap and one to hold the spring guide nut, and tighten the top cap to that nut. You don't have to go all like crazy swole on it, but you do want to make sure that it's tight. After that's done, slide your fork tube up and thread the top cap into the tube. And that's it. We've now successfully lowered a CRF150R fork, and now your bike is gonna feel so much better on 12s. You're gonna have the right amount of suspension travel. It's not gonna feel like it's super tall in the front, and it's just gonna handle so much better and just be so much better than just raising the forks and the triple clamps. So the forks are on, they look absolutely sweet, and I'm super stoked that this project turned out as well as it did. It was honestly really daunting to read it and just look at pictures of how it was done, but just getting hands-on and doing it, it was actually pretty easy. So if you're capable of replacing your fork seals, surely you are capable of lowering your forks. Now, I thought I was gonna lower the rear, but it actually may not be necessary because as it sits right now, the geometry and everything looks pretty spot on. So I cannot wait to at least go take this out to a parking lot and see how it handles. But as always, if you like this video, make sure you click that like button. And if you're new here, make sure you click that subscribe button so you can see more videos like this from me in the future. And as always, do not forget to have a nice day.